Can I get some noise? How many heard the story of Simone Scott?
Yeah.
They've heard it. They've heard it.
Yeah, they know it.
They know it.
They know it. Well,
I never heard it.
they said some have.
Some have. I'm gonna read you the story of Simone Scott while we wait for this to come on, okay? Simone Scott was a 19-year-old student at Northwestern University, and she received the first dose of the Moderna vaccine in April. She felt noticeably fatigued afterward and developed a bad cough, but thought it could be allergies. Time passed, and suddenly it was May, and she was due to receive the second dose. Although she wasn't feeling well herself, she stuck with the schedule and went in to get it done. Simone got the second dose on May 1st. Over the next 2 weeks, she experienced frequent nosebleeds, a low-grade fever, sore throat, swollen lymph nodes, and an irregular heartbeat. During this time, she visited the student health clinic 3 times, where it was assumed she had some kind of virus, and she was given an antiviral medication treatment. Doctors failed to properly diagnose the previously completely healthy teenager. Let's emphasize that. 19-year-old little girl, beautiful little girl, completely healthy. By May 16th, she had only gotten worse. Dizzy, seriously fatigued, and unable to walk, Simone was admitted to the hospital, where she and her family were told her heart was failing. They suspected it was myocarditis and that a virus was attacking the heart. It wasn't a virus. It was the spike proteins from these vaccines, these so-called vaccines. An emergency surgery to insert a balloon pump was performed, but it failed, and Simone was placed on heart-lung bypass. By May 23rd, doctors informed her parents that a heart transplant was her best option. Remember, she was previously healthy, and she was blessed to receive one that evening. Following the surgery, Simone continued to struggle and had to remain sedated. Her lungs had been severely damaged, and the immunosuppressive drugs she was given to tolerate the transplant led to a severe lung infection. On June 11th, Simone's parents were called in to say their last goodbyes. Simone passed away that Friday morning. Now, we were out in the streets. We were out in the streets for George Floyd. I just can't understand why we're not out in the streets over Simone Scott. Can anyone tell me why we're not out in the streets over Simone Scott? I still can't share the screen yet, Kevin, just letting you know.
Guys, is that almost there? Can we? Oh. So maybe you can talk about for a second before they show you on your screen to show your presentation. Can you explain to people what the spike protein narrative is? Because everybody's trying to explain that. Can you educate our community about that?
I can do my best. So understand this. These mRNA so-called vaccine, this gene therapy that they are masquerading around as a vaccine, what it does is it takes over your normal cellular function. So you get injected with the mRNA sequence. The mRNA sequence also has graphene oxide in it. It has lipid nanoparticles. It has PEG. It's got all these things in it that are not designed to keep you healthy. The mRNA sequence gets into the cell, and then it takes over your normal cell function. And what it does is it turns your cells into a spike protein producing factory with no off switch. What they didn't tell Simone Scott, what they didn't tell her mother and her father, is that the spike protein is enough to be injurious to the cardiovascular system. We know this to be true based upon research conducted by the University of California at San Diego and the Salk Institute. where they did a study early in April that proved definitively the spike protein was enough to injure the cardiovascular system. So what happened to Simone Scott is that the Moderna vaccine forced her body to start producing spike protein with no off switch. Those spike proteins damaged her heart and led to the myocarditis that's now on the warning label, along with these things can kill you on every single experimental inoculation. After the first procedure failed, they put a heart transplant in her. She got a new heart. This was a previously healthy, totally fine, would have recovered 99.9% of the time, vibrant little girl. Her whole life ahead of her. They put a new heart in her, and her body is still producing the spike proteins. The spike proteins attack the new heart, and with the combination of her being on immunosuppressant drugs, she had no ability to withstand. She dies on June 11th. No parent should have to go through any of that. Now, I don't know if that answers it for you, Kevin, but...
Yeah, well, it does, but what happens is normally when they turn on their TV and they're listening to Rachel Maddow, and I call it Big Pharma News, you know, you have people coming to their family and say, oh, well, what you're saying is a conspiracy, you know, because the greatest conspiracy is ignorance. I want everybody to know that. So when they start calling you a conspiracy theorist, well, they said that when they were taken as slaves, that wasn't true either. You know, they say, you know, I mean, how many times have we heard that in our own community? So I wanted people to understand that whole narrative about spike protein. But can you explain to them, Doc? We're still trying to get your presentation up, but we got some minutes so I can get some stuff done with you. Can you talk about the long-term impact that this particular experimental biologic, now I call it an experimental biologic because that's what it is, because they keep using the term vaccine in a sense that it's a traditional vaccine. Can you break that down a little bit for us?
Absolutely, I can break it down for you. When somebody says the long term, we don't know. We don't know what the long-term impact is, but we know what the short-term impact is, and it's horrific. Right now, from data that came out of the Vaccine Adverse Events Reporting System yesterday, for data that's been collected over the last 9 months, there have been 14,506 deaths associated with these injections. Now, if you follow any of the work that Attorney Tom Renz has been doing, he's got whistleblowers who say that at the very least, that's underreported by 5 times, which means you would have to multiply 14,000 deaths by 5. That's over 60,000 deaths in 9 months in connection with these experimental inoculations. So then I get doctors all the time that come at me and say, well, correlation doesn't equal causation. Now, what a very catchy phrase, right? They love these little 3-word phrases, don't they? Correlation doesn't equal causation. Well, then I say to them, what do you have to tell me about the 5,018 people who died within 48 hours? Because that sure looks like causation to me. Come on. Can I get an amen? Can I feel your audience? Can I get an amen? Can I hear something? All right? You don't get to tell me that 5,000 people dying during an experiment is justification that the experiment should continue. What most people don't know is that most clinical trials fail. And most clinical trials fail because when there is even one fatality during a clinical trial, that is enough to shut the entire clinical trial down. So now, if we have 48 hours, over 5,000 people dying that we know of, and Tom Renz's whistleblower is accurate in saying that you could safely multiply that by 5, that means in 9 months, 25,000 Americans have died within 40 hours of receiving these experimental inoculations. But they want to tell you my people, they want to tell you that they are safe and effective. Well, that seems to be something that we can have a debate about, but I wonder when they're going to have the courage to come and debate us on it. Because you'll never see Anthony Fauci coming out and having a debate with me, with Peter McCullough, with Dr. Simone Gold. He doesn't have the balls to do it. They're cowards. They're cowards, and we're treating you like you're cattle. You're not even 3/5 of a man anymore, my people. They have no respect for you, and they don't think that you're smart enough to go and read and figure things out for yourself. But we're going to show them different, aren't we? Can I get an amen?
Well, we're still. Is he ready to show his slides, or no? He can't do it. No, we can't do it. So you know what? You're brilliant enough. Let me just let's start breaking it down. Kevin, I'm just going to start breaking it down for everybody. Okay, everybody, you're gonna have to visualize with me. Okay, you're gonna have to visualize with me. I'm gonna do my best. What I will say is you will have this whole presentation. Kevin, can we agree that we're going to get everybody the PDF? Absolutely.
So
everybody will get the PDF today.
Everybody going to get it? Okay. All right.
That's no problem.
Well, let me break it down. Give me just a couple minutes.
Okay.
Break this down for everybody. See, first and foremost, this beautiful girl, Simone Scott. There's going to be links in this. You can click on it. You can learn more. Educate people. You're going to see information about how I've been working to try to get the state health departments to issue guidance on nutrition, and they won't do it. You're going to see in this presentation how asymptomatic transmission is a lie. Let me tell you how much of a lie it is, my people. It's a lie. All right? We have two studies that I'm going to show you in that presentation to compare them side by side. One is the Wuhan study, and one is a U.S. study. You ready for this? You ready for this? In the Wuhan study, it was peer-reviewed. There were 9,898,000 participants in it. Let me say that to you again so you understand this. There were 9,898,000 people in this study. They used PCR testing, antibody testing, and even viral culture testing. They found a grand total out of 9.8 million people. They found a grand total of maybe 300 asymptomatic carriers. Can I get an amen? Okay. Now, they did some additional testing and did some contact tracing to follow up on those 300 people. And guess what? They couldn't find one case of asymptomatic transmission in any of those 300 people. So that means that out of 9.8 million people tested in this study, they couldn't find one case of asymptomatic transmission. Can I get an amen? You are being lied to. The U.S. study that they tried to grab on and say, here's the study we should use, the Wuhan study that had 9.8 million people in it is garbage. That's what they want you to believe. Guess how many people, Kevin, were in the U.S. study? Guess how many people? 1. 0. They write numbers on a chalkboard and telling you that they're accurate. It's a lie. Asymptomatic transmission has never been proven, so you're going to see on that. You're going to see some evidence of how they inflated the death certificates. That's a big focus of my team's work. We've written 2 peer-reviewed papers on how the CDC broke the law, 3 federal laws to inflate death certificates. You are being lied to, my people.
So let me ask you a question.
I'm telling you.
Let me ask you a question because there's a couple of people. I got Dr. Simone on. Can you give us a perspective on how to stay healthy in the quickest way? Because a lot of people are not talking about how to maintain their health, how to change the culture of health in their community, how to stay focused on, look, majority of the young women that I know in my community are overly obese now. I know where that's coming from. A lot of our children are chronically ill. I know where that's coming from. How do we get back on track? How do we claim our health again and run away from these white coats and start securing a better, healthy community? How do we do that?
This is Major TV and this is brought to you by Major. Like and subscribe to get your notifications. Couldn't do it without you, need your full participation. And we giving back just to show our appreciation.